There is a moment, and maybe you've already felt it without knowing what to call it, where something inside you goes quiet. Not peaceful quiet, the kind of quiet that happens right before something breaks open. You're not in crisis, you're not falling apart, but you can feel something shifting beneath the surface. The way you can feel a storm before the sky changes color, and part of you already knows, whatever comes next, you won't be the same person who started it. This is that hour, not the hour the world sees, not the hour that shows up on your calendar or in your conversations with other people. This is the hour that lives inside you, the one that has been building for longer than you probably want to admit, the critical hour. And the reason it feels both terrifying and strangely familiar is because some part of you has been waiting for it. So before we go any further, if something in those words just landed differently for you, if your chest moved in a way that surprised you, that's not a coincidence. Stay with this. What's happening here is worth your full attention. Let's be honest about something most people never say out loud. There's a version of your life you've been living, and then there's the life you can feel underneath it, pressing upward like something that needs air. These two things have been coexisting inside you for a long time, and for a while, that was manageable. You learned how to hold them both. You learned how to perform one while quietly protecting the other. You got very good at functioning within the gap between who you are and who you've agreed to be. But here's the thing about that gap, it grows. Not all at once, not dramatically. It grows in the small moments of quiet discomfort. In the pause after someone asks how you're doing and you say fine when fine is the furthest thing from the truth. It grows in the decisions you make because they make sense, because they're responsible, because they're what someone like you is supposed to choose. It grows every time you silence something real inside you in order to protect something external. And one day you wake up and the gap isn't a gap anymore. It's a distance. And you look at the life you've constructed, this careful, reasonable, well-defended life, and it fits you the way a borrowed coat fits. It looks right from the outside, but you feel it in all the wrong places. Carl Rogers, one of the most perceptive psychologists who ever lived, spent his entire career watching this happen to people. Not because people were broken, not because they had failed, but because somewhere along the way, most human beings learn to move away from themselves in order to survive their relationships, their families, their social worlds. They adopt a self-concept, a story about who they are, built more from external feedback than from actual inner experience, and then they spend years, sometimes decades, defending that story, even when the story stops being true, even when it never was. And the distance between the story and the actual person, Rogers called this incongruence, is where the quiet suffering lives. Not the dramatic suffering, not the kind that gets attention or explanation, the quiet kind, the kind that shows up as numbness, as restlessness, as a persistent sense that something is missing even when, by every external measure, nothing should be wrong. You know what this feels like. You've probably been living close to it for longer than you realize. Here's what makes the critical hour different from all the other hours. Most of the time, when we feel that discomfort, that subtle wrongness, we manage it. We get busy. We reframe it. We tell ourselves we're overthinking, we're ungrateful, we're going through a phase. We find ways to reduce the signal without actually listening to what the signal is saying. And for a while, that works. Life continues. The performance continues. The carefully maintained distance between inner experience and outer life continues. But then something changes, and it's not always a dramatic event. Sometimes it is a loss, an ending, a moment where the structure you've built around yourself simply cannot hold anymore. But sometimes it's quieter than that. Sometimes it's just a Tuesday afternoon and a feeling you can't name that refuses, for the first time, to be managed. Sometimes it's a conversation that goes a half-inch deeper than expected and something inside you surfaces that you didn't know was still there. Sometimes it's reading these words right now and recognizing something in them that you weren't sure anyone else had ever felt. The critical hour isn't marked on any clock. It's marked by a single, subtle, almost terrifying realization. You can no longer pretend that the life you've been living is the life that belongs to you. Not with the same ease you used to. Something has shifted. the story you've been telling, about who you are, about what you want, about why you've made the choices you've made. It no longer fits in your mouth the same way, and you can feel it. The incongruence Rogers wrote about isn't just a theoretical concept anymore. It's a lived, bodily sensation. It's the tightness in your chest when you imagine staying exactly where you are for the next 10 years. It's the strange grief of realizing that some version of yourself never got to exist, and that you've been mourning them without knowing it. If something in you just shifted reading that, if something tightened or softened or both at once, I want you to know. This channel exists because these moments need a place to land. If this kind of conversation speaks to something real in you, consider subscribing. Not as a habit, as a choice, because you're looking for something, and maybe this is part of where you look. Now here's what people misunderstand about transformation. They think it's about becoming someone new. They imagine it like a renovation, tearing out the old, installing something better, cleaner, more functional. And so when they feel the critical are approaching, they brace for reconstruction. They start asking, who should I become? What should I change? What's the plan? But Rogers understood something that cuts much deeper than that. The transformation you're actually moving toward isn't about becoming someone new. It's about becoming more fully who you already are. The self that has been pressing upward. The one you've been managing and suppressing and carefully containing. It isn't a stranger. It's not a fantasy. It's not the idealized version of you that exists only in possibility. It's the you that existed before you learned what was acceptable, before you adjusted yourself to fit the expectations of the people whose love and approval felt essential to your survival. That self didn't disappear. It went underground. It learned to be quiet when quiet was required. It learned to present the acceptable version at the front while staying behind the curtain. And the work of this hour, the real work, the slow and uncomfortable and deeply human work, isn't to design someone new. It's to let the thing that's already there finally take up space. But this is where it gets complicated. Because the version of you that went underground for a reason. The suppression wasn't random. It was adaptive. At some point, being fully yourself carried a cost, and you decided, consciously or not, that the cost was too high. Maybe authenticity meant disapproval. Maybe it meant conflict. Maybe it meant losing someone's love or belonging, or facing the terrifying vulnerability of being truly seen and possibly rejected. And so you made an adjustment, a reasonable, human, understandable adjustment. You became slightly less yourself in order to remain safely connected to the world around you. The problem is that adjustments compound. Each small compromise, each moment of self-silencing, each performance of someone slightly different from who you actually are, adds a layer. And over time, the layers become the presentation. The mask starts to feel like a face. And then one day you look in the mirror and you're not entirely sure what's underneath anymore. Not because you've lost yourself, but because you've been so focused on managing the surface that you've forgotten what it felt like to move from the inside out. And here is where the fear quietly enters. Because if you begin to remove even one layer, you don't know what will shift. You don't know who might feel uncomfortable. You don't know what structures in your life were built around the version of you that was easier to predict. Congruence sounds peaceful in theory, but in practice it can feel destabilizing. When you stop performing, relationships recalibrate. When you speak more honestly, some dynamics strain. When you choose an alignment with what you actually feel, rather than what you think you should feel, the familiar ground can tremble. But Rogers believed something profoundly hopeful, that the organism moves toward growth when the conditions are right, that beneath the adaptations and compromises, there is a natural tendency toward wholeness. The discomfort you're feeling isn't a breakdown, it's information. It's the internal signal that the gap between who you are and who you're presenting has grown too wide to ignore. And once you notice that gap clearly, once you truly feel it, you can't unfeel it. That is the beginning, not of reinvention, not of dramatic overhaul, but of alignment, of slowly, deliberately allowing your outer life to reflect the truth of your inner one. And that process doesn't happen all at once, but the decision to begin often does. The critical hour is the moment when that forgetting stops working, And this is why it's both a crisis and a gift. This is why the shift inside you, the one that might have brought you to this video, to this conversation, to this particular reflection at this particular moment in your life, is worth taking seriously. Not with panic, not with urgency, with attention. Rogers believed, deeply, and without hesitation, that human beings have within them an inherent tendency toward growth. He called it the actualizing tendency. This biological, psychological, irreducible drive toward becoming more fully oneself, toward greater complexity, toward richer engagement with the world. It doesn't require perfect conditions. It doesn't require someone to give you permission. It's already moving inside you. It's what's been pressing upward all this time. The restlessness you've felt isn't malfunction, it's direction. But here's what that means for right now, for this hour that you're standing inside of. It means the discomfort you're feeling isn't a problem to be solved. It's information. It's your inner experience. For the first time in a long time, refusing to be edited before you can feel it. It's the distance between who you've been performing and who you actually are finally becoming too large to ignore. And your job in this moment, the only job that actually matters, isn't to figure out what to do. It's to stop running from what you already know. What do you already know? Sit with that for a moment. Not abstractly, not theoretically. What do you already know about yourself, about your life, about the parts you've been protecting and the parts you've been suppressing, that you've been working very hard not to look at directly? Because most people, when they arrive at this question, do something very human and very understandable. They flinch. They let the question land for just a second, and then they move toward their phone, toward a task, toward anything that keeps the surface busy and the depth at a safe distance. And there's no judgment in that. The flinch is not weakness. It's protection. It's the same protective movement you've been making for years. But notice what happens when you don't move this time. Notice what happens when you let the question stay, when you give it room to breathe inside you without immediately reaching for an answer or an escape. Something surfaces, something quiet and honest, something that has been waiting, not with urgency, but with steady persistence, the way water finds its way through stone, not by force, by continuation. If this question just moved something in you, if you found yourself going somewhere real for a moment, that's worth saying out loud. In the comments below, I want to invite you to share. What is the thing you already know but haven't been willing to fully see? You don't have to have an answer. You don't have to be resolved. Just be honest. These kinds of conversations, the ones that happen when people stop performing and start speaking from a real place, they matter. They're part of what makes this space worth building together. And if this video reached something real in you, a like tells this platform that this kind of conversation deserves to exist. It's simply a quiet signal that depth still has an audience. Here's the shift, the one that doesn't come as advice or instruction, but as something you may already be beginning to feel. The transformation you're moving toward doesn't require you to be brave in the way the world usually defines bravery. It doesn't require dramatic changes, announcements, or burning anything down. The real transformation, the one Rogers spent his life bearing witness to, is quieter than that. It's the slow, deeply personal process of learning to trust your own experience again, not the edited version of your experience, not the version filtered through what you should feel, what's acceptable, what makes you easier to love, your actual experience, the raw signal before you've made it presentable. And this is harder than it sounds, because most of us have been editing for so long that we've forgotten the difference between signal and filter. We feel something and, before it fully forms, we've already assessed it. We've already asked, is this appropriate? Is this too much? Is this allowed? And in that split second, something real gets trimmed. You move through your day slightly less yourself than you were a moment before. The practice, and it is a practice, is learning to catch that moment, to feel the assessment beginning and pause before the editing happens. Not to eliminate the filter entirely, because you live in a world with other people and that requires navigation, but to know, clearly and without self-deception, what you actually feel before deciding what to do with it. That gap between the raw experience and the response is where you begin to find yourself again. Self-acceptance isn't a destination. It's not a permanent state. It's a practice of returning again and again to what's true inside you, even when that truth is uncomfortable or hard to explain. It's learning to move from the inside out again, to make choices that come from your values rather than fear, to let yourself be known, gradually, imperfectly, starting with yourself, rather than spending your life managing what gets seen. This is what it means to become a person, not in a grand, finished sense, but in an ongoing, living one. Rogers came to believe, after years of sitting with people in their most vulnerable moments, that the goal of human life was simple: to become more fully oneself. Not a better self, not an optimized or enviable self, just more fully you. There are people who have felt exactly what you're feeling right now, who have sat inside their own critical hour, confused, restless, grieving something they couldn't name, and found that what followed wasn't what they planned. It was truer than that, more unexpected, more themselves. And if somewhere in this conversation something opened, or shifted, or grew lighter, you're not imagining it. That's what it feels like when the actualizing tendency has a little more room to breathe. And the fact that you watched this, that you stayed with it, that means something. It means you're already in it. The transformation isn't coming, it's already happening. You don't need to know where it leads. You don't need a plan or a clear vision of what comes next. You just need to keep paying attention to what's real inside you, and trust, the way Rogers trusted, that movement toward your own truth is never movement in the wrong direction. The critical hour isn't a warning, it's an invitation. And the quiet part of you that's been waiting, the part that knew something needed to shift, has been ready longer than you realize. You just needed to stop long enough to hear it. If this conversation stays with you, if it follows you into your day or into the quiet before sleep, come back. Not because you need more answers, but because sometimes the most important thing a human being can do is stay with the right questions. This channel is built for that kind of staying. Subscribe if you want this to be part of how you find your way back to yourself. And I'll see you in the next one, whenever you're ready.